This also raises the larger issue of vocal variety. So vocal variety is an all-encompassing term, meaning that there's just some, there's a whole bunch of difference going on, in many ways, as we would have when we're engaged in conversational speaking. So in the informative speech, one thing I'm asking you to try out is trying to convey a sense of enthusiasm or excitement about your topic matter. And in order to do that, we probably need a variety of speeds, pitches, and tones. So I want to spend a little bit more time talking to this sort of vocal variety in terms of tone. So we don't want to be monotone, right? That's one of the absolute sort of the things we want to avoid. Monotone is rarely happens in conversational speech, right? When we're engaging in normal everyday talk with one another, we don't necessarily fall into a monotone. We play around with pitch. Now the danger is when we stand up to speak, either because we're so focused on our notes or we're worried about how a concept is going to sound, we might fall into that monotone, and we certainly want to avoid that. So how do you avoid monotone? This is one of the persistent challenges in speech coaching. And the answer is, well, you can't really plan your way too much around avoiding monotone without having it sound weird, right? And so today, I would like to look at, it would be very odd if you're really planning out too much of your tonal shifts. But there's one thing that we can do, and that is we can practice with tonal changes. So I've got a couple of exercises that you might try as a way of expanding your vocal variety range. Now, you can do these in general, just as general exercises to get better with playing with tone and pitch and rate, but also they're very good warm-ups. So if you're going to deliver a speech, maybe one of the things that you do before you do that speech is warm up, right? Your voice is an instrument. If you're playing a game or if you're playing an instrument, you'd want to warm up ahead of time. So too with your voice. So you want to sort of prime the mental pump. You want to get the muscles moving. So these are some exercises that you can do, one, to help increase your vocal variety overall, but also you can be doing these as a way of warming up just prior to delivering a speech. So one of these ways of increasing your vocal variety. Take a single line and read the same line through with a variety of different tonal changes and a variety of different emotional hints. So, you could take a very blasé line like, "The store ran out of bread." And you can deliver that 100 different ways. The store ran out of bread. 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 Of what? Of bread! This store's terrible, and I would never shop there again because apparently it's a bakery. But so you can take a line, and although it's silly, it's a good way of trying out a bunch of different tones and reminding yourself of how important tone is just prior to delivering a speech. So you can take a line and run it through various ways. Another thing you can be doing in the privacy of your home or just before you do a speech performance is practicing reading aloud other stuff. So you can read aloud poetry or you can read aloud famous speeches. So if I would read some poetry, one thing to practice with is rhyming poetry. Because again, with the thing with rhyming poetry is obviously you want to acknowledge the rhyme, but you don't want it to become too sing-songy at the risk of undermining the true meaning of that passage. So it just sounds more like a song than it does attending us to the particulars of that writing. So this is Robert Service, good anthology, rhyming poetry. "And so in the strife of the battle of life, it's easy to fight when you're winning. It's easy to slave and starve and be brave when the dawn of success is beginning. But a man who can meet despair and defeat with cheer is a man of God's choosing. The man who can fight to heaven's own height is a man who can fight when he's losing." So, you can play around with that. That's a good way of trying out different tones. You can maybe do some T.S. Eliot, where rhyme scheme's not as apparent, not apparent at all. This is from, what am I reading from? The Hollow Men. "This is the dead land, this is the cactus land. Here the stony images are raised. Here they receive the supplication of a dead man's hand under the twinkle of a fading star." So both of those are kind of serious. You can also, and I think this is very useful, get an anthology of famous speeches. Great way to practice various things. And so if you're going to be speaking, might as well practice with speeches. So this is the final paragraph, beginning of the final paragraph from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. So the thing is, I really recommend, if you want to improve your vocal variety, if you want to improve your performance, if you want to improve your delivery, not only looking at models of imitation in terms of, well, how does this person sort of convey their enthusiasm? We've been doing that in terms of studies of ethos, but also throwing yourself into the works and words of others. So I used to coach competitive speech back when I was in high school. I engaged in competitive speech. And it's sort of a very, there are speech competitions, debate competitions globally, but as it's emerged in the US, there are certain tracks. So in competitive speech, in competitive forensics, we typically have interpretive events, limited prep events, and platform speeches. Interpretive events are interpretations of literature. So reading literature and performing it in a way that conveys the richness of that literature. Limited prep events, you did one of these, the impromptu speech, and there's also a very similar one, the extemporaneous speech. And then the platform speeches. Informative speech, you're doing one of those now, and then also a persuasive speech, one that we'll get to in the next unit. So in coaching these and in doing these, people tend to fall into their specific range. So they only do interp, or they only do limited prep. And that's always sad to see, because all these events are really necessary for developing a well-rounded speaker. So someone who just did persuasive speaking and didn't attend to interpretive events was missing out on so much. Having to read others' words and find and illustrate the emotionality or the intensity of that passage stretches you as a speaker. And in doing interpretive events and reading other people's words, I'm not asking you to become an actor. That's not really what's going on here. But really finding how to deliver a line in the way that you want. Finding how you want the audience to hear and understand and feel that line. You can do this through a study of others, but you can also do this through increasing your own ability to work in their realm, to work in their words. So I would strongly encourage you to pick up an anthology, a speech anthology or poetry anthology. And certainly you can find these free online. They are great writing resources and practice resources. From antiquity forward, Isocrates, Quintilian, Cicero, and others would acknowledge that having a deep sense of literary models, of speech models, was a good way to achieve eloquent speech. So in our more practical vein, I think you should be working with anthologies and reading other people's words so that you can increase your ability to do vocal variety well, so you don't fall into that monotone. And that's just one exercise that allows you to do that.